Shalom Uvracha, Freiliche Hanukkah, should be a happy Hanukkah. This is the 8th day of Hanukkah. It's called Zeis Hanukkah. And the 8th day of Hanukkah is a day that portends to great miracles and wonders, and the Jewish people should be Zeicha. We should have all of the great wondrous miracles that our forefathers had during Hanukkah. And we should like to speak about the improbable becoming probable, the impossible becoming possible. And the truth of the matter is, if we were to ask ourselves a question, like the Chazal asked, "My Hanukkah, what is Hanukkah?" Before we see Rashi's interpretation, so we'll leave it more or less as a general question. What is Hanukkah? We can understand it many, many levels. What's the significance of Hanukkah? Or as Rashi says, what was the basic reason that the Chazal commemorated Hanukkah? There were so many other great miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wrought for the Jewish people. Nevertheless, they have more or less been forgotten in the glorious history that we have, and very, very few events that were of historical significance have become commemorated, memorialized for all of eternity. In other words, the two basic Yom Tovim which the Chazal instituted, commemorated, memorialized as Purim and Chanukah. Of course, that we all know, they happen to be linked up with great historic significance as well as miracles that occurred during that time. Yet, if we go back to the Gemara's question of my Hanukkah, so we can ask exactly what is, like Rashi says, the reason that Hanukkah was selected to be a yontif of permanent status. Rashi, of course, emphasizes what was the nes that Chazal selected to be the reason for the perpetuation of the 8 days of Hanukkah. But we're, so to speak, extrapolating a little bit and trying to understand what is the significance of Hanukkah. To place the question in proper perspective, so we can simply identify Hanukkah in contrast to other great historical miraculous events. There was no question about it that when the Jewish people came into Eretz Israel on the 10th day of Nisan, that was exactly 33 days after the Histalkos of Moshe Rabbeinu, the 40th year that the Jewish people were in the Midbar, so on Zion, Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu was Nistalek, died on the 7th of Adar. 33 days later, the Jordan River split, just like Kriyas Yamsuf of 40 years earlier. Kriyas Yamsuf was on the 7th day of Pesach, that's Chof Beis Nisan, and 40 years later, on Yud Nisan, the 10th day of Nisan, we have the splitting of the Jordan River. It was a great miracle. The Koyanim took the Aron, and they actually flew over the Yarden. The Jewish people walked through, split just like the Red Sea split. Yet no one just about remembers that it was on the 10th day of Nisan when they entered Eretz Israel, which was a historical event. And yet Kriyas Yamsuf was commemorated, eternalized as the 7th day of Pesach. And there are certain ceremonies that are connected with the Seventh Day Adventists. So it was very difficult to understand how this was relegated almost to historical obscurity. Yud Nisan, the day the Jewish people entered Eretz Israel miraculously. And of course, we know in the times of Yehoshua, Chazal called it Pillei Gilgal, there were wonders upon wonders upon wonders. We don't even know the dates of these great events. The strongest city, perhaps in history, was Yericho. It had 7 walls that were surrounding it. Strong walls, fortified. No one ever penetrated even one wall. And all of a sudden, when it came to capture Yericho, so Yeshua and his army simply surrounded it, and they made 7 akafas. They revolved around it 7 times, said Oleinu l'shabeach, blew shofar, and with each circling and encircling of the city of Jericho, a wall collapsed. After all 7 walls collapsed, Yeshua, the Jewish army, entered. They didn't lose one soldier. There was absolutely no casualty. No casualties whatsoever. And they captured Yericho. We don't know what date it was. Why do we not commemorate the day of the capture of Yericho? Wondrous, miraculous. So if we would ask ourselves the question, my Hanukkah, so we could also ask you within the context, why was Hanukkah singled out? Rashi, as we said a moment ago, stresses what was the miracle that took place on Hanukkah that prompted the sages of old to commemorate it as a holiday. Yomim Tovim, like the Gemara says. But before we focus our attention on trying to answer this question, we have to observe something which is really remarkable. The one that observed it first was the Chasam Sofer. Megillah, we're all familiar with. There's no lack of material which we cannot acquaint ourselves with every single aspect of the holiday of Purim. We have Megillas Esther that describes the story in great detail. We have a tractate, the Seches Megillah, that tells us all the halachas of Megillah. Also, there's so much Agadita, so much historical information, so much moral and ethical lessons we could derive from it. Nothing is lacking. Hanukkah, there's Megillas Chashmonaim, was not written Ruach HaKodesh, it was not accepted. Among the Chof Dalid, the 24 Kisvei HaKodesh, it was more historical, it was not written under divine inspiration. Like Esther Baruch HaKodesh Nemra, Esther was written through divine inspiration, dictated Milamalo. So we have nothing, no Masechta, no Megillah, which is accepted insofar as Hanukkah is concerned. Perhaps we have a lot of Dapei Gemara. No, we have 2 or 3 pages in Maseches Shabbos, and those are parenthetical because we're discussing Neirei Shabbos, the kindling of the Neiros in honor of Shabbos. So parenthetically, the Gemara mentions Hanukkah as well, because there's a common denominator. We have Neirei Shabbos, which we have to kindle. That's a choiva. And we also have Neiros Hanukkah. So there's a common denominator. Both are mitzvahs that were mandated to light candles. Afterwards, we have a very, very brief historical account. And indeed, it's laconic, but the little that we have, we also don't understand. So the Gemara answers that my Hanukkah So Rashi says, Aleza Nes Kavua, the Galia Masechta was written by Reb David Nevardika. He was a Talmud of Reb Chaim Volozhin in the early 1800s, classic commentary. So he was medayik from Rashi that basically there were two wonders that transpired historically 200 years or so before the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. It's around the time of the Common Era. It was the nest of the Pach HaShemen, the miraculous lighting of the oil for 8 days, even though the oil that was placed in the containers of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash was only adequate for the lighting of 1 day. And we had the wondrous military victory, totally outnumbered by a sophisticated, strong army from Yava. Nevertheless, the Jewish soldiers prevailed. It was a miraculous triumph. That's how Rashi writes, according to the Galia Masechta. The answer, of course, is very esoteric. My Hanukkah, the Tanakh Rabbana b'Chofei b'Kislev Yom the Hanukkah Tamni Yo'inu, commencing on the 25th day of Kislev, so we have 8 days of celebration. Forbidden to have a eulogy, forbidden to fast. Historically, what occurred? That's all they did. They defiled the holy oil, and therefore it was not possible to light the menorah, which, according to all the Rishonim, including the Rambam, you lit in the evening, the Erev ad Boikel. The Rambam says also in the morning there would be a lighting, but that has to be with oil that's pure, and somehow or other there was no oil that was pure at the time until they found a jar of oil that was sealed, signed by the Kohen Gadol. Wasn't too much, it was a little bit, sufficient for 1 day, and that lit 8 days. So that's why we commemorate Hanukkah, not because of the military victory. We commemorate Hanukkah because of the nest of the Pach HaShemen, that it lasted 8 days instead of naturally lasting 1 day. This is the Gemara. So as I say, it's extremely difficult. Each line needs a lot of explanation. We know, as we mentioned before, that during Bayis Sheni, the 400 plus years that the second Beis HaMikdash existed, so on 2 occasions, there was a battle, and on 2 occasions, the enemy succeeded in entering the Beis HaMikdash. One, of course, was singled out, a Roman general. This, of course, took place 200 plus years after the miracle of Hanukkah. And when Titus came into the Holy of Holies, Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim, he took out a sword and he tore to shreds the paroiches, which separates the Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim from the Heichal. And afterwards, he set it on fire. So what was the matar of the Romans? What was their goal orientation? Destruction. And they succeeded. That's Korban Bayis Sheni. We commemorated with Tisha B'Av. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed on the 9th of Av, as well as the second. It burned an entire day. Rabbi Yochanan was under the impression that we should commemorate the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash on the 10th day of, because most of the destruction due to the fire, took place on the 10th day of Av. The Yevonim at this point were winning. They were in total military control. And they were capable of doing anything they wanted insofar as destruction is concerned. So what did they do? Nothing insofar as the Beis Hamikdash is concerned. They did absolutely nothing. They just took pure oil and made it impure, that's all. They could have destroyed the Holy of Holies, they could have destroyed the Eichel, they could have destroyed and burned the entire Beis Hamikdash. Timu Kol Hashmonim, that's the only thing they did. And the beauty of the Beis Hamikdash, with all of its majesty and glory, remained intact. Nothing was destroyed. And it's a wonder. Beis Hamikdash is the central place where the Jewish people meet HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Symbolically, the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash would have an overwhelming impact upon the Jewish people. It would break their mood totally, and they did not do it. So what's the reason for it? What do we understand from this? Tim Mukol Hashmanim, that's one thing they did. There's another observation, which we have in that Ala Nisim. During the 8 days of Hanukkah, we add to the bracha of Hoidoyah. Moedem Anachnu Loch is a bracha of Hoidah, of gratefulness and thanksgiving. We express it every day, 3 times a day, for all the Nisim and Nifloyas that Kadosh Baruch Hu does constantly. Erev, Boker v'Tzaray, in the evening, the morning, and the afternoon, that Kadosh Baruch Hu manifests His great, great mercy and kindness upon all of us, and we give thanks like an Eved who gives thanks to the king, a servant thanks his master for everything that he does for him. So on the days of Hanukkah and Purim, so we add Minyanid Yoma, certain miracles that took place at that time reference. So we say Nisim, Gvura is choice, Nisim the Purkim, Gvura choice, Chomet, and we explained that the military victory was fantastic. After all, we were ma'atim, we were few, and Rabbim gave over, relatively speaking, proportionately a few in the hands of many. We were weak, they were giborim, they were strong. So in other words, it was a miraculous victory. And of course, we don't thank in Moedim for the Nes of Pachashem, because Moedim, Anachnu Loch, as most of the tefillah revolves around this worldly affairs and this worldly matters. We ask for parnasa, sustenance. We ask for refuah. Most of our bakashas relate to the Jewish people insofar as their well-being and welfare is concerned. Of course, we ask for slicha, we ask for mechila, we ask ultimately that there should be a Beis Hamikdash, a Semach David, v'sechazenu einenu, but that's basically for our safety and for our security. Tefillah, insofar as the bakashas are regarded, is exclusively for the survival, the safety, the shelter, and salvation of the Jewish people as a physical, spiritual entity. We don't ask for miracles, and we don't thank for miracles. So that's why the Nes of Pach Hashemen is not mentioned in Moedim Anachnu Nisim, She'osisa, that we only had enough Shemen for 1 day's lighting, and it lasted 8 days. We do not thank you for that, Rabbeinu Shalom, and the Shemoneh Esrei, because we never ask for miracles, and we don't thank for miracles that are spiritual in nature. Nevertheless, at the end of the Alanissim, we say something very strange. And afterwards, after the military victory, when the dust is settled, so Vanecha, your sons, loyal to you, came into the base of Migdash, and they cleansed it, purified it, and afterwards they were able to light the menorah. The chatzra is katshecha. They did it in the chatzah for everybody to see. It's something that the Maral points out. Nobody could dispute. The military victory, says the Maral. It wasn't clear that it was a military victory. It was a military victory in the sense of a miracle, a great triumph that defies the imagination, that breaks all the rules of nature. No, says the Maral, it's very possible that it was simply a inspired, motivated army that had nothing to lose, like the Maral says, that Ein Gibar can be Jewish, we have nothing to lose. So you go and fight with a reckless abandon, and the Ma'atim, the few that the Jewish people had, went with a reckless abandon. So it's not clear, it was not 100% clear to the world that this was a miracle. We have people that today say the 6-day war was not a miracle. The Israelis had a stronger army, have a strong army. They lit the Chatzos Kachecha. Thousands of people could see that they put in a little bit of oil and it burned for 8 days. So this was indisputable. This defied the imagination. This everyone saw. Thousands and thousands of people are allowed to come to the Chatzah of the Beis Hamikdash, and they saw an undisputed miracle that didn't take place before, will not take place thereafter so quickly. A little bit of oil burned for 8 days. Everybody saw how much they put in. We're not exactly sure what took place, but it was a little bit, and it lit miraculously for 8 days. That nobody could dispute. But since the essence and the core of the miracle is not mentioned, why are we saying a story that they lit without mentioning the miracle? So we explained why the miracle doesn't fit in here. It does not coincide with the theme of Moedim. But we have another question. Why Bechal mention it? It's not Hoidah. It's not Thanksgiving. It's not a formulation of gratitude like Alanissim is, Ala Mulchamis. Just Islavayseinu, Masati Giberim Biyad Chaloshim. Rabim Biyad Matin. That's a miracle. We thank you for those Nissim. But here we're not mentioning the Nesa Pach Hashemen. We're just describing what took place. It's a story that does not find its proper place in the Bracha Vodah. And another point, which is worthwhile mentioning, is according to all the Rishonim, just about, except the Ramban, that Purim became memorialized, commemorated right after the miracle, the Nafech, the Amalek. Haman was the real Amalek. The enemies of the Jewish people were given over to their control, and they killed out as many as they could, and they emerged victorious. Over here, it says the Shona Cheres Kavim Vosnyam Toim Bahalaboyto. It was only the next year, and we're not sure. Like the Maral points out, the Shona Cheres means the next year. It was after a certain amount of time. It could be it was 2 years. It could be it was 3 years. We're not sure how many years went by. Even if it was 1 year, we still have a question: how is this different than Purim, which was commemorated immediately to be a holiday in the Jewish calendar? The miracle of our nation's success in surviving physically is not the end of the story. The great triumph is not only did we survive spiritually, and not only did the Jewish people return to their former glory, preserving the national character of Yiddishkeit, of Judaism, and remaining committed and true to the values and traditions. No, the motive of the Yevonim was a simple motive. They were not interested in destruction. Haman, who was the real Amalek, wanted to destroy, annihilate, true genocide. Lahashmad ulahareg alabe kol haYehudim minave ad zoken. A child, man, woman, old, young, total genocide of the Jewish people. Made no difference whether they would have capitulated to renounce their faith, chas v'shalom. What would have been had all the Jewish people become apostates? Made no difference. Absolutely no difference. They would become traitors to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They would now reject the entire Torah. Niya kegoyim will be just like the Gentiles. It would not have helped. Because the real Amalek doesn't care about the religious character of the Jewish people. He's simply possessed by a pathological hatred against the race that's called Judaism, Jews, and he just wants to abolish it from off the face of the earth. That is a pathological hatred. The Yevonim were kind people. They had a philosophy of humanity. And had the Jewish people just submitted to a few things, so then the Yevonim would have given them sovereignty, autonomy, to have an independent government, to have a monarchy, to continue living as a unique nation. They were not interested in destruction. They were not interested in mass murder, in genocide. They just wanted the Jewish people to renounce one fundamental belief that we have. And I'm sure that we're familiar with the Bereshis Rabbah Medrash that everybody quotes. We have it here in front of us. The pasuk says, "V'choshech al pnei soim." It was dark upon the horizon before God Almighty created the world. Choshech, the Chazal say, is a reference to Golus Yavon, to the exile of Yavon. How is it referred to in the word V'choshech? Because they darkened the eyes of the Jewish people, in a metaphorical sense, through their decrees. What were the decrees? Chazal tell us, Kisra Keren Asher, She'enchem Chelek B'nei Yisrael. You write down on the horn of your ox that you don't have a Chelek B'nei Yisrael, of the God of the Jewish people. Strange. It is extremely strange. We don't understand it. Of all the Gezeros against Shabbos, against Chodesh, against Milah, so all of a sudden the Chazal and Safar is trying to find a remez in the Torah Kedosha, and they finally found it. This is Malchus Yavon Shechshichu Eineim Shel Yisrael B'Gzerei Say Shabbos. You can't keep Shabbos anymore. You can't perform a bris milah. That's what we have in Sefer Chashmonaim. We don't understand. We absolutely do not understand it. Totally mysterious, esoteric, what the Chazal mean. We have another question. What did the Klal Yisrael do? What was their response? Did they or did they not? So the Medrash Rabbah in Bereshis did not inform us of the sequel to this Gezerah. However, the entire Medrash is brought down once again in Oitzer, HaMidrashim and Bereshis, that deals with Hanukkah. It's on page 192. And the Rambam, which we have over here, in Igeres Shmad, he wrote a very famous, not so much a letter, but it was like a small compilation of the times that there was the persecutions in Spain. And first he wrote Igeres Taimon, and then he wrote Igeres Shmad that dealt with it. So the Rambam brings this now. The Rambam's topic basically is the Gezeros which the Goyim decreed against the Jewish people, the evil empires of history implementing their evil decrees. That's in Gezeros Shmad and Gezeros Taimon. So he brings down this medrash and he asks the question. But beforehand, we'd like to see, due to our curiosity, what was the sequel? What happened? So the Medrash Oitzer Midrashim tells us, the Rabbanon taught us. They learned with us. Bimei Malchus Yavon HaRishon Gozu al Yisrael. The evil empire decreed upon the Jewish people, this is more elaborate than the Medrash Rabbah. Anybody that had a security bolt in his house that he used to secure the door for safety reasons, against burglars, and for other type of security reasons. So the Gezerah was to write on that bolt, Bariach. Now it's just right, you have a certain door that's called Rav Bariach. It's a strong door. That the Seinei Yisrael is a euphemism. It means the Jewish people renounce their being part of the inheritance of the God of the Jews. Miyad, immediately over Yisrael, v'okru b'richem, shebevoteyem. What did they do? They took the bolts, cast them away. In other words, as far as this Gezerah is concerned, the Jewish people rose to dizzying heights, tremendous courage, tremendous heroism, and did not abdicate. They took the bolts, did not write on the bolts, they did not carve on the bolts that specific formulation that the evil empire decreed upon them, and they cast them away. And now the Oitzer Midrashim brings down the complete version of the Medrash Rabbah in Bereshis. Fascinating. Yichtov al Karnoi she'ein l'seini Yisrael chereb elokei Yisrael. You write on the Keren Ashar, the horn of the ox, that you renounce being part and parcel of the Jewish God Almighty, Monolitzlan. So we're curious. What do Chazal have to say? Here they didn't cast away the shar. Holchu Yisrael u'mochru shireyem. They went and they sold their oxen. They resisted with great courage. And that precipitated the war. Had they done what the Yevonim told them to do, they would have just done that. There would have been a physical war. The Yevonim would not attack physically the Jewish people. And they would not have enacted an evil decree against Shabbos, against Chodesh, against Rosh Chodesh they shouldn't observe, and also Bris Milah. It would be necessary because they would have been apostates. We'll soon see what this means. So the question naturally arises. The Rambam, the Geras Taimon, at the very beginning asked the question. He asked it a little bit differently. Why does it say, why was Shar singled out, the ox, to inscribe this declaration? And why only Shar? It should say Shireyim, all of their oxen. Mashma that the Gzera was only against one ox. Very strange indeed. So, l'chura, the answer is a very, very fundamental answer to Judaism. As the Rambam points out, the shor in an agricultural society was the focus of the parnasa that the Jewish people had. The Gemara says in Gittin that Rabbi Yossi said, "Miyomai lekarisi lishni ishni l'sheiri sheiri." I never called my wife. Never called my ox. Till I called my wife Basi because she's the whole home. She's the keres habayis. She's the foundation of the home, and the shor is the foundation of the field. Shasharu ikroi shalasada, says Rashi, because through the transporting of the materials of the entire crop and by plowing with the shor, so that exactly is the most important element in order for a Yid, for a Jew at that time, to gain the sustenance. Yet, as the Rambam points out, the Sil Shisharim says it's a Yisayid, we Jewish people believe that it's not true. That the parnasa comes direct from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that which we plow with the ox is only because we have an obligation of ishtadlus, of endeavor, the derech hateva. But no Jew believes that there's a causal nexus between his ishtadlus and the result, should it be a favorable result. Not Hishtadlus brings about the parnasa. We believe be'emunah shleima de'eina hishtadlus mevia parnasa. Yet we're all chayiv, we're all obligated, mandated to be mishtadl, to endeavor, whatever endeavor it is, for the purpose of a parnasa, because this is a gzeiras hamelech, a divine decree, and it's no more than paying up a choiv. I owe to the ashkocha. I owe something, so I have to work. It's a priyas choiv, but this is not linked up with the result. On the contrary, Our status can bring about the opposite of what we want. It can bring about a failure, but it should have bring about a success. It was not the status that was responsible. It was the Gezerah Min HaShamayim. So the Mesilas Yesharim, the Perek Chof Aleph, states the following: Hishtadlus is muchrach, kiven shehishtadul yotzei dechevasai. After he fulfills his obligation, yesh mokan lebircha shamayim to tishbei olav. He did what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to do, so there's a mokan lebircha shamayim to tishbei olav. But he doesn't have to overdo anything, because not his activity will bring about the result. We do not believe in kaichi v'yotzim yodi. Also, Yisachai Lazar made our great wealth. So it's interesting that the Rambam says the following: the shor that the Yevanim wanted the Jewish people to inscribe that formulation was a shor shebishas harisha hoyush chorshim ba'oisay shol shuhu hevi at the palnasa, according to the Greeks. Ve'ein, says the Rambam, ha-parnasa ma'kadosh baruch hu. What was the Gezerah, says the Rambam? That specific shor which they used for the hishtadlus in order to earn a living. So they wanted on that specific Karen Asher should be written Lochem Chayim Belekei Yisrael, because the Yevonim had a philosophy that they wanted to spread. It started with Alexander the Great. They wanted their beliefs should be spread in the entire world. Anything which we cannot understand, anything which is beyond human comprehension, anything which we cannot touch, we cannot feel with the senses, does not exist. The Jewish people speak about Olam Haba, Sheirus HaNefesh. There's no such thing. It's not something which we can perceive. According to the strict code of logic of the natural law, we cannot perceive it, so it does not exist. The Jewish people believed everything is supernatural. The Yevanim said nothing which is not within the realm and scope of nature exists. So it was a clash of cultures. Goods of the senses surely exist. The human body surely exists. And with their sense of beauty, they said only somebody who is handsome, only somebody who is beautiful. So first of all, it should be exposed. The opposite of tznius. Only somebody who could excel in sports, the first one that built stadiums here in Eretz Israel. Only he is Taifas Mokaim, only he is a person of stature. And anybody that does not correspond to this list of values is meaningless. Somebody who is weak, humble, meek, doesn't possess physical strength and prowess is nothing. And this is the basis of Western culture, which unfortunately has crept in to every single value system, including partially by us. They've succeeded partially. Wealth, beauty, career, prestige, anything which revolves around this worldly values in the here and now, that has intrinsic value. Olam haba, spiritual values, worthless. They succeeded to a large extent, unfortunately. Teva, So the Rambam says an unbelievable thing. B'derech hapshat haposhut. It was the shor that through that means achieved the end of Parnasa. What did the Greeks believe in? Who were the greatest, most outstanding believers in Koichi? There's a direct link between success and Ishtadlus, the Greeks. That shar, points out the Rambam, it was the shar that brought about the Parnasa, has nothing to do to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you the Parnasa. In this world, everything is physical. Everything is material. The physical prowess of the shar brings about the Parnasa. That's what the Rambam says. That's why it doesn't say Shvarim. It's a specific shar that was used for Harisha and for loading and moving from place to a place. Ipso facto, we can understand the first part of the Chazal. Why would the Yevonim Gozru al Bariach Habayis? Because we believe in the supernatural. We believe in a logic of Torah, which is contrary to the logic of the Yevonim. Who watches our house? Who offers us security? Baruch atah Hashem Shema Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Shema Yisrael. We do close the house, no question about it. That's a Ishtadlus Balma. But we're Ma'aminim, B'nei Ma'aminim, and not the bolt, not the strong door protects us. Because if Hashem lo yishmar ir, shov shakat shaymel. Because Baruch is not going to protect the city, so all the shaymer won't help. And they wanted simply to be oiker, to remove once and for all the emunah of Klal Yisrael that we're only mechuyev in a ma'aseh koif ba'alma, to do activities, no correlation between the activities and the result. The result is pure siyata d'shmaya, is pure hashgacha, it's pure chazdei Hashem. That's why they singled out these two factors: parnasa and security. The Kotzker said, Atzabeya goyim, kesef v'zov, ma'aseh deyodom. Atzabeya literally means the idols. But the Kotzker said, Atzabeya goyim is also loshen atzfus, depression, the sadness. What brings about depression and sadness in the goyim? Because kesef v'zov is ma'aseh deyodom. They think making money is ma'aseh, depends on us, on ma'aseh deyodom, on the activities of man. That brings about. So if their actions and activities do not bring about the result of becoming rich, so they'll fall ba'atzvus. They'll go into depression. They didn't do enough. Perhaps they should have done that. We don't believe in that, because not the atzlachas are ours. Not the success and triumph is due to human endeavor, and not the failure, and not the loss is due to human endeavor. This is what the Hashgacha decreed. So we see from the Eitzah Midrash what Chazal taught us. Why was there a war? Because the Jewish people at that time rose to great heights of courage and heroism, and they were moiser nafsham al kedushas Hashem, and they threw out the bolts. They sold their shvarim. At that time, they came to the greatest wonders in history. It was a chizuk of emunah, because now they had to rely exclusively on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because they couldn't do any ishtadlus to make a parnasa or to secure themselves in their home. And they were saimech on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shahi is a zones HaKoyel, b'chein, b'chesed, b'rachamim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Shemer Yisrael. And now we have a little glimpse historically why there was a war. Even though the clash was not a clash of titans, who was stronger. It's not Napoleon against the Russians. It's not Hitler, Yamach Shemai visit wants to take over the world. It's not that. It was simply a war of cultures. Spreading a philosophy that they had. And the Rambam says that Tumah V'Taira is the greatest of all chukim, because it's something we don't see and we don't understand. Somebody touches somebody dead, he becomes contaminated, defiled. We don't see anything, any contamination, any defilement. Somebody else touches him, he touches food that's defiled. We have a halacha that if you have a kazayas mace, a little bit of a mace, downstairs there's a hole on the second floor, it goes up, we don't see anything going up. So they wanted to destroy all concepts of purity and impurity, of Tumas Nido as well. And therefore, on Hanukkah, we stress the loyalty that the Jews had to purify the Beis Hamikdash. It meant a lot to them. The Yevonim did not succeed. Even though the Ravid says that Tumah, as opposed to Kedusha, is a negative concept. Tumah just refers to the absence of Taro. Kedusha is a higher level. That's true. But insofar as Chanukah is concerned, it became a positive value, because the miracle of Hanukkah was due to the fact that the Jewish people wanted to express the message that impurity and purity matters to them, and it makes no difference whether it's tangible, intangible, understandable, not understandable. They would not accept the corrupt, idolatrous culture of the Yevonim. So it was not just a return to their past glory. They fought for the values of Tumah V'Taira, and they rose to higher levels, much more than their former glory. So it's a yontif of renewal, like the nomenclature says, Hanukkah Sabayis. It's a renewal of commitment and love to the Chukei Satayra. And therefore, I know it's late, but we just, the yontif of Hanukkah could not be established immediately, because the triumph was not an objective triumph over evil, like it was during Purim. Haman and the Amalekim were destroyed. So there's a celebration. And this celebration is connected with eternity. Every year we will celebrate the destruction of Haman. Another time perhaps we'll explain why. Hanukkah, the military victory was not important because the military encounter with the Yevonim was precipitated by a culture war. And unfortunately, like the Chazal tell us, the Yerushalmi told us, there was many misyavnim. There were many people that were drawn to believe everything is al derech hateva, is by ways of the laws of nature. Indeed, the Jewish people, historically, Hanukkah rose to the highest heights of all time. The Chazal waited. They had to see whether the effect of Hellenism, of laws of nature, would take effect upon the Jewish people, even if they wouldn't write Ein Lanu Cheder B'Elokei Yisrael. Makes no difference. But it had, perhaps it penetrated into their depths, into their way of thinking, and they thought like the Yevonim. No, they came to rededicate the Beis Hamikdash. It mattered to them. They rededicated it. They hallowed it again. There was a renewed framework of Avodas Hashem. They kindled the menorah. It was the happiest moment of their lives that they could restore the Avodah to the Beis Hamikdash. And then they waited, perhaps a year, perhaps longer. They examined the situation and they saw that the Jewish people overcame Hellenism, remained loyal to Elokei Yisrael, and had a pure emunah, just like the Chazal tell us that Shemen is the moichem, Timu, Kol Hashmanim, symbolically means Timu, the moichem of the Jewish people, that they actually lacked an emunah that everything is min hashamayim. After a year's time, the greatest of all miracles took place. There was a thorough check made, and the Jewish people restored their emunah, einoid milvadoi. And that's why we commemorate significance. We don't have too much time to elaborate. Hanukkah, Lashona Acheres. And we heard from Shmuel Rozovsky that why does it say the Moasur B'nei Vino Yimei Shmoyne Kavu Shiro V'nonim? You could say B'nei Chochmah, wise people, why understanding people. Shmuel Rozovsky, Rosh Hashiva Ponovich, said Tafshin Lamed Aleph over 50 years ago, almost 54 years ago, that Chochmah means wisdom, which you understand exactly what took place. Bino Nevoinim Dover Maven Dover B'toich Dover. You understand one thing from another thing. It's more analytical. From one phenomena, we understand another phenomenon. So the Beis Yosef asked the question that Hanukkah should only be 7 days because the miracle of the kindling of the Neiros Mikdash only lasted for 7 days. That was the miracle. The first day was nature. So Shmuel Rozovsky said, according to the Ramban, say Parshas Bud, we won't read it inside totally, but in Lashon HaKodesh, Ramban says, "But min hanisim hameforsamim u'gedolim odom moida b'nisim hanistarim shekol dvareinu b'kol karenu einu elo nisim nistarim v'sheinu mamin bazein l'chelek b'teiras Moshe." Translation is through the great open miracles. So that's not the purpose that we should have great miracles, says the Ramban. One comes to admit, and one comes to, Moida also means to acknowledge, to become aware, and to give thanksgiving. and gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the hidden miracles, the Nisim Nistarim. Because the Nisim Nistarim constitute the foundation of the whole Torah. For no one can have a part of the Torah of Moshe unless he believes all the things that happened to us, all the events, all the episodes, are miraculous in scope, there being no natural or customary way of the world in them, whether affecting the public or the individual. Why are we Amanifra? Why are we the selected people? That's what they wanted to say. We're not the selected people. We have no Chelek, Belokei Yisrael. There is a God. They believed in God. But there was no chosen people who have a special relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everything that happens to us is generated through Hashgachas Hashem. This is called Nisim Nistarim. Said the great Rosh Yeshiva, Zeichet Tzaddik V'Kodesh Livracha, very simple. If B'nai Chochmah, they would have had wisdom, so they would have perceived the phenomena of the Shemin lasting 7 days miraculously, contrary to the laws of nature. It's against the natural law. So if they were to commemorate Hanukkah eternally, so they would have only commemorated it for 7 days. But since the principle of the Ramban says that the purpose of Nisim Gluyim, Nisim Mefarsamim, open, revealed miracles that nobody could doubt. Nobody could doubt. It's open, clear as the day. The Shemesh Betzarayim, like the bright sun of noon. No possibility of rejecting it as a miracle. But what's the very purpose for these type of miracles? We should think, we should become aroused, motivated, inspired, and come to the realization that the Jewish people are different. They're the Manifchar. And everything about us are miracles. That the miracles are not revealed, they are concealed. And like Shmuel said, B'Shem Techofetz Chaim. That most of the people that came into Eretz Yisrael from the Midbar were born in the Midbar. So they had become accustomed all of their lives to see Man Min HaShamayim. And what bracha did they make? HaMoitzi Lechem Min Shamayim. Where do you get water in the Midbar? From stones. Be'erishal Midrash came from a stone. Across Hasela. That's where you get water. Go fetch water. So they saw most of their lives, their adult lives for sure, those that were born in the desert, the water comes from stones. All of a sudden they came to Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, there's not going to be any more bread that comes from Shemaim, no more man. You want to eat bread, you're going to have to plant seeds, little seeds. And after the seeds get rotten, so they're going to have tremendous growth, and from this you'll have your bread. So what was the reaction when they heard this from Moshe Rabbeinu? Wow! In Eretz Yisrael, we're going to see miracles. Mamin HaShemayim was not a miracle. For us, it's a miracle because we got used to the fact, became accustomed to the fact that you get wheat from planting seeds and having it grow into grain products. But they didn't see that. So they actually thought Min HaShemayim was the norm. That was the natural law. And now they're going to have miracles. Oh, really? There'll be no more water from stones? So where are the stones going to come? Where's the water going to come from? Not from stones? No. There's going to be rain that's going to come part of the year. And from that you'll drink water. Wow! A miracle! Eretz Yisrael is a place of miracles. Unbelievable. What do we see? Bizmanenu, this is the whole point of the shir. What do we see Bizmanenu every day in the headlines? Our missiles, our planes, our weapons, they destroyed the enemy. Cause and effect. We did it. That's Chachmas Yavan. It's causal nexus between the activities and the results. Perhaps we believe it partially too. Chas v'shalom, it's not true. Kadosh Baruch Hu Ish Milchama, he destroyed the enemy. And in conclusion, we heard from the Rosh Hashiva, Zecher Tzaddik L'Kadosh L'Bracha, that the Chavetz Chaim, if he went, let's say, he wanted to get up from one chair to another chair, or he went out the door. So he said, Be'ezus Hashem, I'm going to go out the door. Be'ezus Hashem, I'm going to go from one chair to another chair. Every pula that he did, every activity that he did, he said, Be'ezus Hashem. Once he forgot to say Be'ezus Hashem. When was that? So Rabbi Zalman Meltzer said, that was when he departed from the Tzibur in Radin. He already secretly had a house in Pesach Tikva in Eretz Yisrael months before his expected departure, but he did not want to inform the people of his community because he was afraid they would apply pressure and stop him. So he never told them. But so Shabbos, he was supposed to leave by ship to Eretz Yisrael. So Shal Shudas, he mentioned that he's leaving to Eretz Yisrael. He's departing. He's very grateful to the community, but he feels in his old age he has to Mekayim mitzvahs Tliyas Ba'aretz. So he purchased a home in Pesach Tikva. And so Shabbos, he's leaving. Everybody was disillusioned. That was the end of the short speech. It was the first time in his life that he forgot to say Be'ezus Hashem. So Rabbi Zalman Meltzer related that Motzei Shabbos he got sick. They called the doctor. He says, you're not in any position to travel. It's a very severe illness. Maybe when you get better, you can travel. But after the plan didn't travel, well, that Motzei Shabbos, the plan became bottled. He never again undertook to come to Eretz Yisrael. Said Rabbi Zalman Meltzer, only time that the Chavetz Chaim did not say Be'ezus Hashem, and the Rebbetzin of Rabbi Zalman confirmed it that she heard this from the Rebbetzin of the Chavetz Chaim. We are the opposite. We believe not in Teva, we're the Amanifcha, everything is Min HaShamayim. We have to do our Ishtadlus, as we mentioned before, Perei HaChoiv. We're the Amanifcha, we have different values. We believe things we can't see with the eye. We have Emunah Lemala Midarach HaTeva. And for the Jewish people to exist, we have to go out from Hanukkah with a chizik in Emunah Lemala Midarach HaTeva. And Be'etz Hashem Yisbarach, this will bring us the Gula Shlema Mehera Mamish Be'etz Hashem.